In New York, as of this week, 98,400 people were being housed in city-run shelters, a population roughly equal to the size of Albany. That's according to the City Hall's latest headcount. New York Post, other outlets reported on this. I did a talk on New York, how they're busing migrants to the suburbs because New York City is full. So nearly half of them, 48,700, are asylum seekers. So get this, folks. It costs roughly $385 a night to put up a migrant family in one of these city shelters, officials said. So meeting the asylum seeker crisis is setting taxpayers back. This is absolutely incredible. Setting taxpayers back roughly $7.9 million every day. Okay? So, and this all started in 2008, if you go back and follow this stuff, a sucker punch that was landed by America's Barack Obama, wolf in sheep's clothing, and the subsequent transformation of the nation into a grim third world dystopian hellhole, as it has been overwhelmed by invaders who are pouring in as a result of the current administration, Joe Biden's open border policies. Remember, Obama said, we need to take America down a notch. We're getting too cocky. Got to take it down a notch as he becomes a billionaire post-presidency. So take New York, for example. You have to understand, there is no two-party system anymore. It is a uniparty at the top, if you follow this. Both parties play on the same team. So, folks, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell hang out at each other's houses. Hell, they used to play tennis together. I have a problem with both parties, okay? So, for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to talk candidly about California. And so I will be shitting on Democrats more than Republicans during this presentation. But I got a problem with both parties. I'm not a fan of either because I know what's going on. So let's talk about some problems in California. Okay, let's talk about the failed California Utopia. I love California. Let me just say that. It's the most beautiful state in the United States. I care about this state. And, you have to tell it like it is to make positive change right now. There's so much opportunity here if they just open the floodgates for business. So I want to talk about this because I think it's important. California is the beta test state for numerous socialist policies to fester and then spread to other parts of the U.S. Leftists lie about California as a success story because they see the state as an accumulation of their ideology. It's a symbol of their vision for the future, and it's falling apart. So instead of fixing what's really wrong, which is easy, it's an easy fix, with it, they fabricate a narrative of a state on the rise rather than on the decline and attack anyone who points out the obvious problems. Now, Democrats and the corporate media in general have invested an intense amount of energy into propaganda campaign that paints California as the central pillar of the U.S. economy and American governments right now. So according to them, California is a socialist utopia, essentially holding the rest of the nation up on its shoulders. And without such blue states, we would spiral into obvious oblivion without the blue states. So let's talk about the lies. Lie number one. California's GDP is so large that it debunks all economic criticism. Folks, this was one of Newsom's primary responses to that wig-wearing Hannity during their debate over California's decline. California has the fourth largest GDP in the world, over $3 trillion. Therefore, no criticism of its economy is valid. With that in mind, I'm going to tell you one of the biggest open secrets about how states like California, the federal government and the Federal Reserve calculate GDP. So it's easy to manipulate this kind of stuff. They count a majority of government spending towards total GDP. They count a majority of government spending towards total GDP. Yes, that's right. California takes large amounts of tax dollars from citizens, takes hundreds of billions of dollars from the federal government on top of that, spends it on all, numerous programs from welfare to student loan to Medicare, Medicaid, then adds it all to their total GDP as if the government actually produces something other than debt. Get it? Again, a lot of states, though, do this in their calculations, but in blue nightmare states like California that have refined the art of GDP fraud down to a science, folks. The California government has found, that all they have to do to drive up their GDP stats is to record levels, to record levels, is keep borrowing and taxing and then spend as much as possible. So, interesting. Another factor to consider is that California's real GDP adjusted for inflation is not generally cited by the media or the Democrats. With COVID, helicopter money triggering a 40-year spike in inflation in the past few years, California has some of the highest prices of goods and services in the country. Third most expensive. In fact, prices are so high that many middle-class workers have, trouble surviving there. And the higher the prices go, the higher the GDP goes by, extension. So if real GDP adjusted for inflation is not considered, then California's economy, might look much stronger than it actually is. If you want to know why California supposedly is about to become, the fourth largest economy in the world, yet every major city in California is littered with homeless people and tent cities. It's because their GDP, it's a shell game. Just like Congress, just like the House plays. It's a shell game. The two-party system, make you think there's only two parties? It's a uniparty. Lie two. High-tax blue states like California subsidize red states. This argument is false for a number of reasons, but let's start with how Democrats present that claim. They argue that red states are among the top states receiving federal welfare dollars and subsidize, and that blue states like California are paying high taxes into those subsidies. This is why you will often hear leftists say that red states would not be able to survive without blue states. Here's why that is total nonsense. Out of the top 10 most indebted states in the U.S., the top 10 most indebted states U.S., 7 of them are Democrat controlled. California has the most debt by far with roughly $520 billion in the red, around 60% more debt than New York and Texas, which are 2 and 3 on the list. California also anticipates a $32 billion deficit in 2023. The state does not have the funds to support itself, let alone red states. That's why it's a lie. So the bottom line, California takes far more money from the federal government than they pay out. So as of the most recent tax year for which figures are available, California paid roughly $234 billion in federal income taxes. However, the state has already been allotted over $390 billion in funds from the federal government so far in 2023, and the year is only half done. So not only that, but California took even more federal money from 2020 to 2022, ladies and gentlemen, $400 billion to $500 billion each year, meaning on average, California is taking around $150 to $200 billion more in federal money than it pays back in federal taxes every year. So Gavin Newsom, next president, get ready, often brags about California's amazing budget surplus during COVID. But the reality is that all of that cash was fed to the state by the federal government and the Federal Reserve printing presses, baby. For example, California defaulted on almost $19 billion in unemployment debt during their lockdowns. I bet you didn't know that. They defaulted, which they then had to borrow from the federal government to cover those costs. I'm surprised they borrowed to help people out. Well, they got to get votes, right? They got to get votes. Then they passed that debt onto the struggling business owners. That's what they did. So forcing them to shoulder the burden through extra taxation while Newsom expanded deficit spending. Just put it off to those small businesses. We don't need small businesses. Who cares? You know, so to be sure that other states had to take federal funds as well to avoid unemployment default, many of them Democrat controlled because of their pointless extended mandates, which we all know were bullshit, and business closures, closing those businesses due to COVID, destroying small businesses. Most states are in the hole when it comes to federal cash, but the fact remains that California is a money pit. You know, it's a prostitute for federal funds. They're number one that creates exponential debt while, leaching far more than their fair share. Blue states like California don't foot the bill for red states. They can't, because guess why, folks? Bottom line, they're broke. 100% fact. So let's talk about lie number 3. There is no citizen exodus from California. Some people are saying that. I openly talk about this. Yes, there is. There is probably one of the more, this is probably it's an ingenuous lie that Newsom spreads. And he spread it recently in his Fox News interview as he cited studies out of the institution like the UCLA to support his position that more people are leaving red states per capita than California. Mr. Newsom, that's a lie. Okay? First of all, the per capita argument is dishonest in this situation. What Newsom is trying to avoid is the fact that California has been losing its population to net domestic migration for around a decade. Okay? Yes, a lot of rich people live in California. There's more billionaires in California than any other state right now. So in 2020, the state saw a loss of 725,000 people with 359,000 net losses in residents after gains are accounted. So they lost 700,000 more people than they gained from April 2020 to July 2022. So to put that into perspective, losing that many people is the same as a city the size of Seattle disappearing from the California map in a span of 2 years, roughly. So California, starting out with a larger population, is irrelevant to the overall trend of population losses, folks. You just got to think between the lines on this, you see? So, when you look at that interview, and I watched it, one of the best points Hannity made to counter Newsom's disinformation was the fact that U-Hauls had no trucks for Californians trying to leave the state because so many residents were relocating and no one was moving in. Newsom just blew that off in the interview. That data, because why? It undermines his entire narrative, folks. It undermines his entire narrative. You should watch that interview. The leftists, think he crushed it. Hannity, he's a has-been. He's a has-been. So U-Haul did indeed run out of trucks in California because so many people were leaving. The top destination for U-Haul trucks from California was Texas, followed by Florida, then Tennessee, South Carolina, Arizona. So one could argue over the potential reason for the exodus from California, but the exodus is a fact. It's a fact. And I believe Newsom's draconian COVID mandates, 100% from talking to all my friends and looking at the data, it was the biggest reason for, the negative migration. But taxation and a hostile business environment are solid causes also. And that's why I'm doing this presentation. Furthermore, California is a sanctuary state which protects illegal immigrants from deportation, and illegal immigrants are counted as part of the resident population in any census, folks. So every surge in migrants can offset California's total population decline caused by real citizens relocating. Think about that. California has handed out at least 1 million state driver's license to illegal immigrants since 2015. Other data I saw, almost 1.5 million. And the state is estimated to have at least 2.7 million migrants within its borders. Some report almost 4 million. Unbelievable. You see how this shell game works? Lie 4. California provides opportunities for middle and lower classes. Not really, no. So let's look at some reasons why California is a hellscape for the middle and lower classes. The state has the second highest housing prices in the nation. I do some business in real estate. It's been good, for me, owning homes here. But second highest prices homes in the nation. Only under Hawaii. It is the most expensive state for rent in the U.S., surpassing Hawaii. An average monthly rental costs about $1,900. California also has the third highest food prices in the country. That's not nice. The median household income in California is roughly $78,000 or $6,500 a month. That's before taxes. So the average total cost of supporting, let's say, a family of 4 in California, including like basic necessities, it's roughly almost $6,700 per month. That is why the Pacific state had the highest homeless rate in the U.S. California has the highest homeless rate in the U.S. in 2022, except for Washington, D.C., another shithole. Living in California is a net negative prospect for the average person, and forget about the starting a small business. And this is where I'm doing this. This is what I'm really upset about, starting a small business and building something better. California is consistently rated one of the worst states for starting and maintaining a business, which is why companies have been leaving in droves over the past years. I don't understand what they're doing. Well, I know why the big, larger goal is, but it's just ridiculous how they treat small. But this is an economic engine that could just explode. So the way California is run and the endless debt and the cycle of statistical, fallacies to hide the growing fiscal cancer is a lot like the way our federal government is run right now, folks, during COVID. They've been exposed. When we see the crumbling of California, we are seeing a glimpse of what will soon happen to the rest of the country, folks. They have to lie. Because if they don't lie, don't divert the blame, they could end up paying the price for the mismanagement later. And they don't want to lose those nice government jobs. So I just, the state has so much potential. It's a beautiful state. At one time, it's an economic engine of the world based on, where the economy is ranked in the world. We all know that. But they play a shell game, and that's what I wanted to point out. It's a beautiful state. I've done some great things here. I've had some great times here. I've made some money here. And a few simple fixes and the changes, it just boom again. But they have major problems, and the federal government is bailing out California, and I just want to go through those because when you just look between the surface just a little bit, you see what a bunch of bullshit it is. I call out both parties on this channel. I say I just want to talk about the facts. I have a problem with both parties. It's a uniparty at the top, folks. If you study this stuff and you see who hangs out with who and they hang out in the Capitol and have their coffee and Danish together, the Democrats and Republicans are lining their pockets, man. And there's a few there on both sides that care about this country. But I just can't emphasize enough. If you've traveled all over the world and you see the dystopia and how lucky this country is, it's the least racist country in the world. That's why everyone wants to come here for opportunity. That's why migrants are coming here, because we're a welfare state. I'm trying to get citizenship in the UK for 4 years. They're going to offer me welfare. I have citizenship in Mexico. That took me a year. I did it the right way. I believe in legal immigration where you come here. The stay-at-home, the stay order in Mexico worked. Okay? You can't. We're $32 trillion in debt. We have 10 more million Americans in poverty. We have veterans committing suicide every day. Maybe we're full right now, and we need to take a break. We just can't let all these people in, and plus they're not vetted. Plus they didn't have to be tested during COVID for COVID, but Americans did. It's disgusting. And if you know the larger goal, this is all done by design, and I get it, and I know what they're doing, and they're gonna, they want to change the population. I get that, but you got to look in the mirror in the morning. People are being raped. There's crime. People are dying, and you got to look in the mirror and go, just for some bucks in your pocket. And the other thing, ladies and gentlemen, is human trafficking is one reason why the border's open. That's a $32 billion a year business globally. And it all comes from the southern border, a lot of it. And they get trafficked all over the world. That's why the border's open too. $32 billion a year business. The drug game is a $1 trillion a year business. It's big money, not just for the cartels. But with all this illegal immigration and crime in these cities, and California, a lot of real estate wise, people are buying. It's crazy. A house just sold in a week in my neighborhood, over asking. So I look at the real estate sector and I'm like, wow, things have slowed down. Yes, luxury and the luxury tax wasn't a good thing, but it's just insane. Some of the most wealthy people in the world live in California. More billionaires are here than any other state. But they're gonna, people are getting fed up. People are getting fed up. And when you look at how they manipulate the statistics is what I want to point out. Take care. Have a great week.